the Dave Ramseys of the world are going to tell you all debt is bad debt. Honestly, I disagree with this. I like to actually break it down between good debt and bad debt. And I know people will disagree with that. But the things that I consider are bad debt are credit card debt. It could be student loans for a job that is not going to pay you very well and where you're not even going to be able to recoup the investment that you had in it. It could be on a house that you can't afford. It could be on a car that you can't afford. It could even be on 0% interest cards on things like a couch, a TV, a computer, things that don't make sense for you and you can't afford today. Good debt, on the other hand, is business debt, right? This could be something to expand your business or to potentially go buy a new business. It could be on a house you can't afford. It can be on a car you can afford. It could be on student loans to get you into a career where you're going to make good money and have a good return on your investment, right? So I think what's important here to notice is that even a house and a car can be both good or bad depending on what you do, right? A second house could be bad because it's something that's super expensive and might not be something you can afford. It could be a primary home that is way too high of a percentage of your income and it's making you house poor. Debt in general is not good or bad based on the topic. It's good or bad based on how you end up using it. All right, now that we've talked about that, I want to talk a little bit about credit cards. Credit cards are something that I personally use and I use for everything. I don't use debit cards. The reason why I don't use debit cards is one, if my debit card is hacked, that is money out of my bank account. And so I have to go to the company and say, please give that back to me. They're going to take a period of time. Versus if I use it on a credit card, right, they just use some of my balance, but they actually didn't take my money because I didn't pay that already. So that's one reason. Two is I like the points. I probably have 500,000 points right now that I'm going to use for travel or something similar. I keep saving them up and up and up until I'm going to be able to do a big trip. So I like the rewards and I'm good at spending. I look at what I make and what I spend. I spend about 23% of what my gross income will be this year. About 35 to 40% is going to go to taxes. The rest of it goes to savings. That allows me to do all the things that I want to do, spend however I want, but I'm still investing correctly. Because I have good behavior, I can use a credit card. Other people though, they sit there, they have these credit cards. They're like, great, I'm getting 2% cash back or 2% rewards, but they're sitting in credit card debt. And so the average credit card is going to be 25 to 30% interest. If you ever pay any interest to your credit card company, you are going to lose compared to the rewards you get, right? You're not going to get more rewards than you are going to pay in those interest payments. If you can't manage your behavior, credit cards are the worst thing that you can use in your own financial life. Let's say that you today are in debt, right? It's a situation that nobody really wants to be in. And it's a situation that you should try to always avoid. So when I sit down with people and they show the debt that they have, I say, okay, great. Let's not go backwards and beat yourself up, right? You feel how bad of a situation you're in. You feel this pain. You've already beat yourself up enough. Let's focus on the future. And so when we focus on the future, we can focus on two things. One is the strategy of how we're getting out of debt. And two, the strategies to avoid going back into debt. I really want to talk about that second one first. So when people think about credit card debt or any type of debt in their whole debt strategy, they always think about how do we get out of debt as quickly as we can. One thing that I do like from Dave Ramsey is the idea of building momentum and making progress. When I think about debt strategies and getting out of debt, the one step that I like first is to build a tiny bit of savings. So I'm not saying go build a 3-month emergency fund, get to 10, 20, 30, $100,000 in your emergency fund, then go to the debt. But I like the idea of getting anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 in an emergency fund. If you are early on, you don't make a lot, you don't spend a lot, the 1,000 can be the right number. If you do spend a lot and you're a little bit further along, then 3,000 is the right number. The reason why I picked those two is because generally that's kind of the average cost of an emergency that isn't a loss of job. And so by building these savings first before you go to attack the debt, it does a really great thing for you and it helps you avoid going back into debt. Like I just talked about, progress is super impactful. What I want to do is have that progress be set where, hey, I know I built these savings. Now I'm going to go attack a debt. And if even an emergency comes about, then at least I can pull from my emergency fund. I don't need to go back into debt. There's the other side of this where people say, well, don't do that and just go attack the debt. If you end up having an emergency come up, you're just going to put more in the credit card and you're going back to the situation you're in. Honestly, they both can make sense for the right person, right? If you're really focused on like, man, if if I go backwards, that's going to kill my momentum and I'm going to feel terrible about myself and it's going to be really hard to want to get back into the strategy, then you should build the $3,000 or the $1,000. If you're somebody that's like, no, I just want to be the most efficient, make the most progress, and if something happens, I'll swipe my credit card and I'll go back to attacking it, then avoiding that step is going to make the most sense for you. What is the right strategy for you? What is the one that makes sense? And what is the one that you're going to stick with? Because at the end of the day, the best plan is the one that you're going to stick with. Now that we talked about that part, the next thing that we need to think about, what is the method that we're going to use of paying off our debt? If you just have one credit card with $5,000 on it, that's pretty easy. You're just going to go attack that debt as much as you can. But for most people, they have a ton of different types of debt, right? They might have a personal loan, they might have a credit card, they might have a mortgage, they might have a car loan, they might have a 401k loan, right? The average person says, I have $500 of extra income per month after my expenses. I'm going to go throw 100 at each 5 of those loans. But at the end of the day, that really is the least efficient method to make progress. So there's 2 methods really to think about here. There's the snowball method and there's the avalanche method. The snowball method is really pay the lowest balance first. You go look, what's the lowest loan? I'm going to take all 500 of that surplus I just talked about, and I'm going to go pay down that loan. Let's say there's $900 left on it. You're going to do 1 month, and then you're going to do the second month. That's going to get paid off. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take that 500 a month plus the monthly payment you freed up. So let's say that minimum was 100 a month that you had to pay. So you have the 100 plus the 500. Now you have $600. You go to the next smallest loan, right? You do that till it's paid off. You take that plus that minimum payment, move it to the next one. This goes back again to feeling progress. When you pay off the smallest loan first, you are going to feel progress because you're wiping out debt and you're moving to the next one. Instead of 5 net loans, you have 4. Then 4, you go to 3, etc. Now, Avalanche is all about paying highest interest first. This one typically tends to be the most optimal because you're focusing on the loan with the highest interest rate, right? If you have a loan that's $1,000 and let's say there's 3%, right? You're barely paying any interest on it. And then let's say you had a $10,000 loan at 20%. It's not necessarily the best idea to go attack this $1,000 one because you're barely paying any interest when you could be attacking this $10,000 one, which is accruing a lot of interest per year, right? 28% on 10,000 would be $2,800 a year of interest accrued if you don't go pay it down. So Avalanche says find highest interest, pay that down. Once that's down, take the minimum payment plus your surplus, move to the next one, do that. Add that minimum payment, your surplus, go to the next one until they're all gone. And then there's really another method that is kind of the combination of the two, highest interest, lowest balance. So let's say you had one loan that was $1,000 at 3%. The next loan was $2,000 at 28%. The next loan was $10,000 at 28% as well. You would go to the middle one, whereas a lower balance and high interest, because you can get that one eliminated, take that, then you go to the next kind of the $10,000 one, get that one done, and then go to the $1,000 one. I typically end up going with lowest balance, highest interest rate. So you kind of combine the two, or I go with the avalanche method, but it really is personal to you and what makes sense at the end of the day. Let's go through an example here just to kind of help you think through this. So let's say that you have the following debt. You have $10,000 on a credit card at 28%. You have $25,000 of student loans at 5%. You have a car loan of $20K at 10%. And then you have a mortgage of $500,000 at 4%. First and foremost, on the mortgage, if you have a 4% interest rate on your mortgage, this is probably not the priority, especially because it's going to take a really long time to make progress on it. So you're going to want to think about the other loans first. In my method, I would go through the list and I would see, okay, $10,000 on a credit card at 28%. I'm going to attack that first. Let's say I have a $2,500 a month surplus. I'm going to go do that for somewhere between 4 and 5 months because of interest. That's going to all go away. I'm going to take the $2,500 plus the minimum payment. And then I'm going to go to that car loan that's $20,000 at 10%. That's highest interest. That's next. I'm going to go attack that with that $2,500 plus the minimum payment until that's gone. Then when that one's gone, I'm going to then go to my student loans and then you technically go to your mortgage, right? That's if you're just thinking about debt strategy. Me personally, I would get rid of the credit card debt and I would get rid of the car loan. And then I'd probably say, I'm not too worried about 5% interest rate on my student loans. I'm going to take that extra money and I'm going to go invest it. Maybe you say, hey, great. I'm not going to invest all $2,500 surplus plus the minimum payments. I'm going to do some extra to the car. I'm not going to do everything towards the car, but maybe 100 or 200 or 300 more a month just to speed that up. And the rest that I'm going to go invest it. The last thing I want to talk about is 0% financing, 0% cards. I think that at the end of the day, these are terrible tools for the average person, right? If you're high income, you manage money well, I don't think it's a bad idea, right? If I went to go buy a car, let's say I'm buying a $50,000 car and they offered me 0% interest, I'm going to take that every day of the week. I'm going to finance that. It's actually getting cheaper per year, and I'm going to let that money stay invested or get invested. But if I'm somebody that can't manage money well, 0% interest cards and 0% interest loans, all they do is push you to spend more than you could. And so the example, or the way that I want you to think about this is, could I pay for this today? If I could pay for the $50,000 car today and be fine, then that means I could do the 0% or low interest loan. If I'm somebody that couldn't, well, then let's save for a while and show that we have the surplus and the ability to actually do it. Because I've seen this from a lot of people. They get 2 cars that are low interest rates. They all of a sudden are like, I need to get a new couch. And then all of a sudden they finance a trip on their credit card. And all of a sudden they're in the situation where they don't even make more than they spend per month, because they're like, oh, not a big deal if I just add this one, and then I just add this one, and then I just add this one. And all of a sudden their fixed expenses are super high and they lose a job, or even their income doesn't keep growing, but their expenses do, and they just get themselves in a really tough situation. At the end of the day, when you think about debt, right, it's all about understanding yourself. Credit cards can be both good and they can be bad, right? If you're going to use them responsibly, great, use them. If you're not going to use them responsibly, that interest is going to hurt you way more than the points are going to help you. From there, right, if you found yourself in debt, then you need to come up with a strategy. Whether it's Snowball, whether it's Avalanche, whether it's lowest balance, highest interest, come up with a strategy. Decide if you want to attack it right away, if you want to build the $1,000 or $3,000 first, and then just be smart with 0% interest cards and 0% interest financing. If you can afford it, it can be a great tool. If you can't afford it, it can be something that you end up regretting years down the line, and I've seen it time and time again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and go follow my page for more personal finance content. And as always, if you have any thoughts, please leave it in the comments below, and I promise to get back to each individual comment. See you next week.